Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about how to think like a Taoist in the treatment room. Now these are the lessons that I've learned over the last 10 years or so, both from practicing Taoism and treating clients as a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine, as well as a massage therapist. Now don't worry, you don't have to be a Taoist in order to find these tips helpful. And Taoism, at least in my opinion, is agnostic, so there's really no religious practices or beliefs involved. But there are three main principles that I bring into the treatment room with me that helps my treatments feel better for me and my clients, and it's led to better results for both of us. Number one is observation is the foundation. Number two is be sensitive to how nature works and live in harmony with it. Number three is harmony and balance is the natural state of all beings. There's a Taoist parable called the vinegar tasters, and it goes like this. The three founders of the main school of thought in ancient China were all standing around a big vat of vinegar: Confucius, the Buddha, and Lao Tzu. They were asked to taste the vinegar and see if it was ready, so each one of the masters took a small taste of the vinegar. Confucius is depicted with a sour look on his face, the Buddha with a bitter expression, but we find Lao Tzu wearing a smile of satisfaction. The vinegar, of course, represents life, and as with all things, there are different perspectives one can take. For Confucius, modern life is sour because it's deviated from the rituals of the past, and the government of man has strayed from the government of the universe, or what he calls the way of heaven, where the right response would be to have reverence for our ancestors and their traditions. Buddhists, on the other hand, believe that a being must rise above their earthly desires and transcend samsara to attain a state of nirvana. They believe that the modern world is an illusion that traps people and leads to pain. And the essence of life is bitter because society's obsession with the pursuit of personal satisfaction and the suffering that inevitably comes from that pursuit. Now for Lao Tzu, the vinegar was satisfying because the nature of vinegar is to taste exactly like vinegar tastes. And knowing that nature, the nature of vinegar, allowed him to be satisfied with the taste of it. For Lao Tzu, understanding the laws of nature is what brought harmony and equanimity to him. And these laws are nothing mysterious. They don't require sitting in a cave for years or following rules of our ancestors to discover them. They can be discovered by anyone at any time. You see, earth and heaven are run by the same laws. Not the laws of man, the laws of nature governs all things, from how galaxies form to how our hearts beat. And all that's required to understand these simple laws is observation. Now, these three approaches to life represent how most people see the world. One is not necessarily better than the other. In fact, I think it might be best if we borrow a little bit from each. But I find myself pretty consistently leaning towards the Taoist perspective, particularly in the treatment room. And my experience has been that if we can bring this Taoist approach to life into the treatment room, our sessions would be more effective and we would love what we do even more. So now let's talk about how to find satisfaction in the taste of vinegar. So for Lao Tzu, the way to understand the laws of nature was to simply observe. Observation in this context is not typically the kind of observation that we might think of during a session. The observation in this context is simply to pay close attention, to notice. While this may sound simple at first, it does indeed require some practice. While we observe, it's essential not to place value or judgments on what we see, hear, or feel. We must do our best to think that it's not good or bad or pleasant or unpleasant or think anything. To observe in this sense is to be completely open to the moment and again, notice. Notice the expression of your client's face and the tone of their voice. Notice how they move and how they sit. And while you observe, do your best not to try and explain why they are sitting this way or their expression is what it is. Just notice. Noticing your client is only half of the act of observation, though. The second half, which for some is more challenging, is to observe yourself. While you're talking with your client, pay attention to what's going on in your inner world. How are you feeling? I don't mean what emotion are you experiencing. I mean, what are you feeling in your body? Observe the physical sensations that occur when you see your client's expression change. What happens when your client tells you about their problem? And when you're working on them and you come across a problem area, really notice what's going on in your body. What does it feel like in your body? Observe it. And observation doesn't just take place in the treatment room. Observe how birds fly, how water flows, how the seasons change, how your children play. Notice it all in the moment without judgment. If you taste some vinegar, simply notice how it tastes. And if you're going through something challenging in life, notice how it feels, how you react, and how you respond. Notice the leaves falling in autumn. Notice how your pet is moving a little slower these days. Notice the sensation of your body with the first sip of coffee in the morning. Simply notice. The skill of observation is the foundation because everything else we talk about is built on one's ability to observe and pay attention. Now, as you observe the world around you, you may notice that the other inhabitants of this beautiful planet that we all share behave a little bit differently in summer versus winter, or even between midsummer and late summer. As the seasons get colder, animals tend to be less active and spend more time in their dens. Trees during spring are active and growing, and in the autumn they lose their leaves and they start to become dormant. And as you notice these things and become more sensitive to how nature works, we can work towards living in harmony in it. Now, when I say nature, I actually mean three different things. First, we have capital N nature, as in the natural world around us. And then we have your nature, and lastly, your client's nature. Remember, a key principle in Taoism is all beings on earth follow the laws of nature, and human beings are no different. We humans lived by the rhythms of nature for a long time, up to about 100 to 200 years ago, in fact. And when we observe nature, we see that there's a rhythm to it all. And when we live in harmony with this rhythm, we thrive. And when we push against the rhythm of nature, things tend to be less harmonious and we feel a little bit less balanced. According to Lao Tzu, the more man interfered with the natural balance produced and governed by these universal laws, the further away harmony retreated. As we observe nature and pay attention to the rhythms of it, we might notice that just like the squirrels and the birds and the other flora and fauna of this planet, we too feel different in the summer than we do in the winter or any season. For myself, I notice that every spring I am full of energy. It's almost boundless. The idea of sitting inside and reading a book is almost painful to me. And in summer, I tend to be active, but a little more laid back about it. I enjoy spending time going for long walks with friends and being a bit more social. Come fall, I feel my body wanting to slow down. Now, during spring and summer, I'm usually active all day, but in fall, I crave a nice long sit by a river with a book. And in winter, I want to take that book I read and really think about it. I feel the need to explore my inner world, to go inside, to be introspective. In Taoism, we honor these feelings and we honor these rhythms of nature and how our life is ever changing, just like the cycles of seasons. And being sensitive to nature, living in harmony with it, brings a greater sense of peace and ease to it all. Now, the second thing you could be sensitive to is your nature. Your nature might be different than mine. In fact, it probably is. I would hope so. But when you observe yourself and your nature long enough, you'll start to feel your natural inclinations and then follow them. Live in harmony with your nature. Here's what I mean. In the treatment room, what's your nature? Do you find that no matter how hard you try, you can't help but find trigger points and release them? Or maybe when someone comes in wanting you to work on their injured shoulder, you simply can't help but find a flow and a rhythm to the session, and before you know it, the client has fallen asleep. There's a style that suits you best, your natural way of healing. And as you observe yourself at work, you notice that you feel energized after some sessions and drained after others. There's a good chance that the ones that have energized you are in line with your nature, and those that have drained you are not. Basically, what I'm saying is be authentic. Be you. Be sensitive to your nature and live in harmony with it. Do your best to build a practice where you can be 100% you all the time. Treat how you want and need to treat, and ideally, who you want to treat. Now, part of the way that we can attract clients we really want to treat is to give them treatments that are based around what our clients' bodies need, their nature. we need to pay attention to our client's nature and live in harmony with that as well. Does your client's body crave deep pressure? Or does their body want a nice light touch? Does their body respond better to a fast pace or a slow pace? The closer we pay attention to our clients during the session, the more we can sense their nature. And when we sense their nature, we can be in harmony with that as well. It allows us to give our client's body what it needs. Now notice that I keep saying our client's body, not our client. Oftentimes our client will say something like, I really want deep pressure. But when we get them on the table, it turns out that even with moderate pressure, it's a little bit too much. Observe their nature and live in harmony with it. Now the last tip is to know that harmony and balance is the natural state of all things. And when we are sensitive to nature and observe nature closely, we see that there is indeed a harmonious flow and balance to it all. Everything in nature is seeking this balance, and this includes our body, mind, and soul, and of course, our client's body, mind, and soul. In biology, we use the word homeostasis to describe this. It's when this balance is off that dysfunction and disease occur. But the beautiful thing is that because the natural state of all beings is balance, all we have to do is observe the natural inclinations of our client and help them move towards this balance. When we think like a Taoist in the treatment room, we're not trying to fix problems. We're simply help guiding our client's body back into a state of balance. We're finding tissues that are not balanced and using our techniques to help restore balance to those very tissues, not with force, but with gentle guidance. And of course, we're doing our best to be sensitive to that nature. As Benjamin Hoff says in the Tao of Bu, the more forcing, the more trouble. So, you see, to think like a Taoist really is to be simply present and in the moment, to be authentically you, and to realize no matter what kind of practitioner you are, be it a massage therapist, acupuncturist, a chiro, a psychologist, any of them, our job is to help guide the client back into a natural state of balance. And when we are in the present moment and observe the world around us and the world inside of us, we can start to live more in harmony with our truest self. And when we pay attention to our clients, we can help them do the same. And I notice as I speak this final thought, my body wants to take a nice, contented sigh, and I hope you notice something similar in yourself. Thanks for watching. Click the subscribe button to keep up to date with more content like this, as well as techniques and tips on how to build a practice you don't want to quit and the skills so you don't have to.